Well, good evening, everyone. It's 5:31. Are we ready to start this show?
We'll wait for, I think we'll wait for Craig to tell us that we're broadcasting first. So
Okay.
We are broadcasting. Sorry about that.
you're good. So we are live, huh?
Yes, we are.
All right, everybody on board?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to call this subdivision meeting of May 12th, 2020 in session. I need a roll call. I'll start with myself, Bill Schnauber.
Gary Israel.
Alex Zarchin.
Okay. Item number 3 is the approval of the minutes of the February 11th, 2020 meeting. I was absent at that meeting, so I'll have to abstain once we get input from either Gary or Alex on that.
I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we approve the minutes of the February 11th, 2020 meeting as written up.
I have a motion to accept,
I second that motion.
and we have a second by Alex Zarchin to approve the minutes from the subdivision meeting February 11th, 2020. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have 2 ayes and 1 abstention. It passes. Thank you. All right. Item number 4, communications, committee and staff report. Anything on that, Lance or Lex?
Nothing new. We provided you the development reports. You'll see that residential starts are on par for the last few years with both single family and 2-family new starts.
Okay. Any comments or questions? Gary, Alex?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. All right then. Moving on to item number 5. Preliminary plan unit development. Review of and recommendation on the Andover Estates preliminary planned unit development plan generally located at the northeast corner of Andover Road and Douglas Street, Andover, Kansas. Staff generally supports the concept of the proposed change, but there are numerous details that need attention. The most significant being the need for a traffic report to support the access controls proposed. The 45-foot right-of-way proposed for Andover Road does not meet the standard 50-foot required, nor does the 10-foot rear yard utility easement for the existing sanitary sewer meet the required 20-foot. Lack of easements or reserves to accommodate required drainage, detention, causes some concern that the applicant is working on. Les, can you fill us in on anything there? Anything changed? Anything, have they done anything in regards to that?
We have met with the applicant's engineer on all the staff comments that are provided on the documents. You'll note that there is a set of documents there that are redlined with clouds and comments. We provided that all to the applicant and haven't heard any responses yet. I don't see them joining on the meeting. I think Craig is supposed to add them in as their agenda items come up. And there's Brian.
Brian, good evening.
How are you guys?
We're doing well, sir.
Let's see if we can get Jason joined in here. I think he's there. He just needs to pop in.
I'm here.
Okay. Yeah, we've received the comments, and I think, while it seems a little like a lot of red lines, the reality is I think these are all things that could be accomplished here in the short term with some comments that we have that Jason and I can share with you. I don't know if you want me to just kind of go through the comments one by one or how you prefer to do that.
I think I would like to anyway. Gary, Alex, any questions there, or is that how you want to handle that?
That's fine.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's fine.
Okay. I'm pulling up the preliminary land unit development, and so just moving from top to bottom, we're okay with the changes to say, I think it's just mostly semantics. The 45 foot or 2 stories within 100 feet of the SF1 and or SF2 residential zoning district. So we're okay with that change.
We understand that, correct, Les? I mean, we don't have any issue with the way you wrote that.
No, it just seemed a little confusing the way it was written to me.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. We just want to make sure we, understood that. So, okay.
Then I think that's kind of the same comment there on parcel 1. Moving down to the next statement about limit hours of operation to restaurant and bar. I don't think we have any issues with that. I think it'd probably be something we could put in there about maybe something like midnight would be an appropriate time to shut operations down of those facilities. I don't know what the other nearby restaurants and bars, shut down at, but I thought that seemed amenable. And we can confirm that number or that time with our client. But does that sound good to you guys?
Well, I have a question. What are the proposed items that are going to go into these parcels? I mean,
Well,
I didn't see.
It's a very like commercial development in general. It's a very until you have a tenant, it's very challenging to know what exactly that might be. But I
Okay.
think given its location, I think it's very natural that it would be something similar to what is up and down Andover Road, like a restaurant or perhaps an office or maybe even a bar. I'm not sure that that's probably the best use there, but I think it could work in the right setting. But I think those are it's very open-ended. Let's put it that way.
Okay. Thank you.
We did, just to clarify, we did restrict the uses to B3, but then we have some exceptions, and then we've added a few uses in there. One of the specific uses that we added was the allowance for residential, so that, and then when we talk about new urbanism, the thought process is that we're allowing a residential component to the second story, for example, if that were to be something that someone wants to do. It hasn't been done a whole lot around here, but we think thinking long term, if it could be useful to do that, then to have a live work situation or perhaps some sort of multifamily up above, that would be okay with us, and we hope that would be okay with you as well. So there's some land uses. Moving down to the landscaping issue, item 5. We don't have any problem making that change. What we would do is just delete the statement about landscapes in street yard shall be exempt. We can just delete that sentence altogether. And I think that would solve that problem. Unless there's more comment there, we can keep moving down. With regard to signage, we don't have any problem making some changes here as well. We would just, I think the problem is that there was some large signage, and we can just eliminate item C altogether and just state that it'll be per the UDM, like item D, C, D would be what we would be keeping. And if anybody would like, I can share my screen, but perhaps this is sufficient. Then we have, we would just strike that whole E altogether on 6E. And the next one I'll probably circle back to because I think there's a little bit more in-depth conversation on the access controls. But I think, so I'll skip that one for now, but we'll talk about the Andover right-of-way at being 50 feet. I believe our client is amenable to dedicating the additional 5 feet. So we're going to go ahead and make that change. And then we can make the change to the notes down there in the bottom. We'll fix that as well. And then with regard to the easement in the rear, we didn't change the easement at the time. We just showed it as it was platted. And so now we would need to add an additional 10 feet to that rear easement. And I don't think we have any issues with that either. It may be that we need to discuss it with staff a bit more on a detailed basis of how those utilities are falling within that 10-foot easement, and if it were to be a 20-foot easement, how that works. So there's some things to talk about with staff on that, just from a logistics. I think some of the utilities that are over there are actually on the other side of the line of the property line. So I don't know how that happened, but the utilities are not fully within that 10-foot utility easement, is what I can tell right now. So we would maybe have to do a separate instrument or something like that on the other side of the line. That's kind of what I'm alluding to. And I think having a conversation in person or just sharing screens would be a good way to do that, and to make sure everybody is happy with what is being done there. With regard to the access, I think, Jason, you might want to chime in here and tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, so we're thinking we understand the issue on Douglas and the part that comes off of that, and we're we don't disagree with removing that one. The street up to the north on the opposite end, if possible, we'd like to keep one there. We're thinking from a traffic standpoint that farther away from Andover Road is desirable, but given how short our pads are, we just need to talk to staff a little further about kind of what parameters, what the concerns are in the traffic study. And maybe I didn't take good enough notes last time, Les, but some of it would be, is the concern just, I'm assuming mostly Andover Road, and the concern about turn movements. I'm guessing it's not a capacity issue. It's probably more of a turn movement concern. And then maybe number of access points onto Andover Road, along with their proximity to Douglas and such. So we in looking at it, we're definitely willing to give up. How many did we have there, Brian?
Well, I think we were thinking we'd give up the Douglas one and have just one opening on the north. So, and then we thought, like other access openings in Andover, that the access across from the strip mall there, just north of the post office, that conceptual location could be granted by license by the city of Andover upon review at a later date. I think we've done that before on other plats, and I think it works well. It puts Andover in the driver's seat as far as figuring out what's acceptable. One of the things with commercial land development is is what you see here before you is merely a rough site plan of what one of 10,000 scenarios could be. We don't know what could go here exactly, and we don't know exactly where we want that other driveway. We just know that the 2 driveways that we have on Andover Road proposed are ones that we think make good sense. And the 3rd drive on the north, we think that that there'd be some sort of license that would be given to the city of Andover to be in the driver's seat to control where that might go in the future. But allowing it to occur would be our desire.
Yeah, we realize that the existing drive that's north of Douglas is not optimal. However, it's there, and we were hoping it, could remain, although not ideal. We're trying to kind of make it still work with the mobile home park, and then as Brian mentioned, the one that's across from First Street, the effort was the intent was to try to align with a major street corridor. We realize, the ones that would have a best chance for full turns. We realize that trying to repeat, maybe I call them sins of the past, for all the openings on the west side of the street across from us. We're not here to repeat that, but we just want to, I guess, we would request that we are given, some favor to try to make this, work for the benefit of these parcels on our subject property here.
I guess what we were looking for is a report from your traffic engineer that's going to kind of give us some estimates of the volume of traffic in and out of these commercial sites, and then some comparison to traffic engineering standards for the separation of these driveways from existing driveways and existing intersections.
Yeah, and I talked to Jay Engelmeyer in our office now. He does a lot of transportation in our office. He's not a traffic engineer, but we are going to reach out and make sure, like I said, Les, I should have done this already, but just wanted to touch base and make sure we understand the parameters. And I fully intend to get our team to sit down and make sure we have that full understanding, and we would work on that report.
When do you anticipate that, Jason?
Well, we understand that so there's kind of 2 things that we had in mind. So we have 2 things here. We have this preliminary PUD and then the final. And I know when we had prior discussions with Les and his staff that the final wasn't, maybe it's premature. We were just trying to be efficient for the client. And so what we'd propose is, what we'd really like to be able to do is get that solved. And we understand that needs to be solved before we can probably get the preliminary PUD approved. But our client's desire would be that we could get that approved, get approval this evening, contingent on providing the traffic study and coming to an agreement that satisfies your standpoints on the, staff comments. And then probably, like I said, the final may just have to be put on pause, but the developer or owner of this would really appreciate the opportunity to obtain approval, at the end of the day at council for the zoning. So that is his vantage point, and that's what his goal would be. So if there's a means of us being able to get there, that would be our request.
Les, any comments there? I mean, I'm seeing an issue. I don't see an issue with the preliminary going to the planning commission to vote on it next week, but as far as the final, I think we're spinning our wheels there, wasting time.
Right, it's a little bit difficult for us to judge not having that traffic report.
Yeah. Jason, I just think we're gonna have a problem at the planning meeting if we don't have that information to put in front of them.
Certainly. Right, yeah, we understand, and we, like I said, we'll just need to follow back up. I don't think it's very difficult. It's just a matter of, as you could probably appreciate, just getting it. We were originally thinking that we needed that, and so we got to do a couple things. And first, our client's not opposed to providing that. We just need to, like I said, I need to follow back up with Les and capture those points and have our traffic people involved so that we can run that past our client, get his approval to proceed, and then get that information to you to review.
Les, the way I'm looking at this is that's probably the biggest sticking point of the whole submittal here, is it not?
Yes. If you look at that traffic circulation plan on the aerial photo, it's not so much about having 3 points of access to the subject property. It's the conflicts with all of those other major driveways to development on the west side. We've got platted streets, we've got private driveways, and the locations that are proposed don't line up with any of those, with the exception of the First Street, which seems to be a logical point.
Less
Right.
in the past, I know that we've done preliminary planned unit developments with added language that states that access points to be finalized as part of the final PUD. And then we'll even depict it on the face of the PUD as a solid line and say access controls except for one opening to be determined at a later time. Is there something like, are you not comfortable with that on this one because it's such a major traffic way that you want it done at the preliminary stage?
Well, I guess number one is to do the traffic engineering to make sure that there is enough spacing between First Street and Douglas and First Street and Rhonda for another access point. And also all of those conflicts with those across the street. If we were to try to match up to any one of those across the street, I see some flaws there also.
Yeah. So in my sorry to interrupt. In talking with Mr. Engelmeyer in our office, it's kind of one of these deals where, and I don't want to try to speak for Jay, but what I recollect was, it's really difficult to, our problem isn't so, it's just you have so many conflicts and undesirable traffic patterns existing that it's hard to fix. You can't, it's hard to say that you've solved anything because you still have all these existing problems. So, so just from kind of the logical perspective is you try to do the least amount of damage as possible. And so just kind of our initial thoughts is, we thought the First Street, I mean, there's all sorts of problems, but First Street being centrally located between Douglas and Rhonda seemed logical. And then, although not preferable, we already have the existing entrance into the park, and whether it's there, so it's been functioning, yes, you would be increasing the number of counts coming in and out of that. And that's some of the danger too, when you load everybody up on just a few points, you create additional, it's not the right turn movements that hurt you. It's just all the left turns and slowing people down on Andover Road. And but it is because of all the existing access points. It's really hard. It's, the report can tell you what it's going to tell you, but it's not able to really fix all the existing woes that are there today.
My problem is I don't know what that new trip generation is. You're
Yeah,
talking-
and you're right, Les. We're not. I'm not arguing that.
And
Is it-
But we can calculate that. Those are straightforward calculations.
about the only straight up fix is for at least those two additional access points, other than the first street, to be right in, right out with a separation island in the center.
We've found that those separation islands don't work. In fact, they're they
pork
cause
chop. Let's
Right.
make sure I understand that pork chop, Les.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, those pork chops, we find people all the time cheating it. The only way it works is if you put a median in the middle of Andover Road.
and that's coming from other traffic engineers that we've run across that where they've actually taken the pork chops out because after they were installed, because they've been so dangerous because people continue to do what they're not supposed to do.
Well, I'd say they weren't designed right. If they're designed properly, the radius is so tight that a person can't sneak a left turn in.
Hmm.
I get to go home every day and pass the one on Webb Road and the Quick Shop, and it's right next to 21st Street, south of 21st Street. And I'm telling you, every time I go home, there's somebody trying to do the impossible out of that thing. So I don't know why they even try, but they do.
I think the other thing we have to take into account is the lot depth here. These are going to be smaller structures on this property, just as a result of the lot depth. If you can see, compare it to the other side of the street, there's a lot bigger properties across the street. So I think there is a limitation and a reality to what's going to be built on here. It's going to be generally a smaller footprint, which should generate less traffic in general as well.
Well, Brian, I have a question then. I think you had mentioned earlier that are these four buildings may not be there. They may be something else in place of them.
Exactly. I mean, this is merely a concept. It's just to get an idea of spacing,
Right.
some notion of you could flip the buildings and put the buildings up front and have the parking in the back. There's a lot of different scenarios that could happen. The main thing is to provide some context to how things could be spaced and the size of buildings and so forth.
Well,
As
they
Dave said,
If
may
this,
be smaller buildings, but you've got notes in there that allows for fast food and drive-throughs. If it was a Starbucks or a McDonald's or a Wendy's, those are huge traffic generators out into a stream of something like 17,000 cars a day on Andover Road that would no doubt generate some left turners both in and out. To give you an idea, you can look at that small Starbucks store at Central and Rock Road, the amount of confusion that it creates and accidents that have been created by that no provision for the left turners.
mhm.
Yeah, I think the difference with this is we've got quite a bit more separation. But yeah, those are some things we can talk about and iron out here before Planning Commission. I'm sure we can get it accomplished. But I do think we can get this report over to you, and these are all reasonable comments by yourself and we can make things come together here.
Alex, any questions, comments?
Well, my comment right now, am I getting audio?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I didn't see my light come on. I mean, one quick comment is what is happening on the west end of the property going up against some of the mobile homes that are there, because it's going right up along those properties. So that's a comment of mine. I also see a major issue with that access point on Douglas, especially with more traffic being driven through Douglas with the redesign of the high school and the elementary school over there, and then the additional development along that's going there, along Kellogg is going to be, driving additional traffic along Douglas. So,
And Alex,
but
I think
my first question is that back property line?
So with regard to the back property line, this is the same owner that owns both sides of the property line, and we would be putting a screening fence as per what we would need to do there.
Okay.
And if you change the easement from 10 to 20 feet, does that shove the buildings a little bit further to the west then?
It could. I mean, I think just kind of think of the buildings as just a generic placeholder.
Sure.
I did a little bit of measurements, and the building footprint right now is could certainly move to the west without any implications and create more of a full movement drive in the back as opposed to a single direction. So there's a lot of options. There's no way we can really tell what this site will really develop out like, and as far as the actual parcel arrangement.
And Alex, your second question was about the access on the south end there on Douglas.
Yes.
They are taking that out of the equation, are they not?
Agreed.
I'm sorry?
Yes, we agreed to take that out.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Gary, anything?
No, I think everything's pretty much been covered. It's just unfortunate that Andover Road wasn't designed as a 6-lane road.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, I guess at this point, I don't have an issue going with a preliminary to the planning committee next week. I just don't see without the traffic report that it's going to fly. I just, as far as the final.
Yeah, it seems that, they're amenable to the request for a 50-foot, requirement on Andover Road, the 20-foot setback on the back, and doing the traffic study. I think that we could probably approve the preliminary PUD and pass that on to the planning committee.
Okay.
So one of the things that kind of got glossed over is the mention of linear detention in the front. And after our meeting with MKC, Jason, you said you were going to work on some text that somehow the detention areas could be put on the final plats or private areas that would be governed by covenants. Have you given any more thought to that?
Well, yeah, we have, and that's why I kind of, the final, it's one of these things where you're trying to provide flexibility for pad sites. The good news, I would say, for your community is that because you have site plan review, you have an ability to have some oversight on this. The unfortunate thing that we discussed is who's keeping tabs on who's doing what for detention and how does that work? And And that's the trouble when you have these little parcels like this, or, I mean, that's the potential for what this would be. The challenge is then how do you deal with detention? And most of the time, from an engineering standpoint, we would like to see it be all kind of this regional kind of, combined area, because it's generally more efficient and it looks more aesthetic, to the community. And the whole linear idea came about because generally that whole west edge of the property, if you drive past there today, you'll notice that there's been inlets extended from the east curb of Andover Road underneath the sidewalk, and there's a couple inlets that pick up the drainage that drains this direction. So essentially the idea was to try to provide this linear detention along that front and just include it. It'd be very shallow, mind you, because there's not very much detention required, but there's some existing utilities and such that are there. And so it would have to be placed shallow above those. And so to do that, to answer Les's question related to that, we'd really not like to lock ourselves in on that because of how long and narrow the property is. But if it, came down to it, we can try to draw up, I guess, kind of a drainage easement, if you will, between that parking and, I mean, it's pretty much pushed up against that easement that's there now. So we're kind of duplicating easements, I guess.
I think the reality of this project is it'll get developed in phases, and each of those phases will be providing their adequate part of detention. And I think that's how it's going to, if I were to had a crystal ball, that's how I envision it to occur. I don't think this is probably going to be developed in one fell swoop. I think it's possible. It's just probably doubtful.
Yeah, that's right. It's going to be in piece by piece, parcel by parcel, but and that's why we tried to present the linear concept in the drainage report, was because we thought from an overall kind of plan that would be the most logical.
So, sorry, a question then. I mean, is there a plan to remove all the structures that are in this area first? Or if you're talking about doing it piece by piece?
That would be up to the owner to discern how he wants to redevelop the property. He may move off all the units now. He may do it later. That would be up to him to determine when and what time that would be appropriate to do that.
Doesn't that compound the situation with the drainage then, if we're doing it in bits and pieces?
I don't think so. I think, there's an overall quantification or quantity of detention that's necessary for the overall property. And if someone were to develop, 1 acre versus, well, they just build that adequate part.
Well, and keep in mind, it's generally draining from east to west. I know it's flat, but it's trying to make its way to Andover Road.
Yeah, the problem being with trying to phase those improvements lot by lot is that the outlets are on lot number 3 and down about lot number 5. Yeah, just north of the line of 5 and 6. So in order to phase development, it would kind of have to be phased in such a manner that it started with lot 3 or lot 5 in order to get the outlet for the drainage in the right place.
Well, or less, I guess I imagine that much like we have on some projects that are phased oddly in the residential realm. I mean, sometimes we have to build a connection swale or ditch or whatever, or pipe that would hook something together. But
and I think it'd be good to mention, sorry to interrupt, Jason, but I think that all these pipes are going to be private. I don't anticipate them being public lines. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think that's what we discussed, is that this would all be privately maintained and constructed storm sewer and detention.
So if a guy that builds on the very far north, he's going to have to extend that storm sewer down to intercept where it needs to tie in. So that's not uncommon.
But that's just our idea. We know we're asking for a lot of flexibility, but it's just kind of the nature of this redevelopment, if you will.
I wish we had a few more definitive answers.
Right, given those notions and the lack of traffic details, I just have trouble moving the final PUD plan along. Now,
I agree. Yeah.
if we're talking about phasing this, that would mean that ultimately you would be dividing this final PUD plan up into several PUD plans, not one lump document with a lot of unanswered questions. And I guess there's always the notion that maybe some of that drainage that comes from the existing mobile home park could be captured on the mobile home park and taken care of there to reduce the areas that would be consumed out of this commercial area.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's, I guess from the owner's perspective, he just kind of, he wanted to be able to, if possible, his idea was he would be able to have parcels that would be able to be sold and developed. We know, like, once again, we don't have like a big commercial center behind this, and anyone exactly on board yet. So it's not. I would say that a lot of times, we come in with a developer and he's going to develop this many pads, but he only has one unit. I guess this is smaller than most of them we seem to get involved with, but once again, it's just the nature of trying to redevelop a portion of this park and into a higher use. And so it's very difficult to create a plan that doesn't shoot yourself in the foot later on.
Les, outside the drainage and the access, was there any other items that left that needed to be talked about, discussed?
Bickley Foster had provided some comments about texts that were minimal and it could easily be addressed.
Sorry about that. Okay. Gary, Alex, what are your comments at this point?
The more I look at it, it just seems like a long, narrow site for trying to put in businesses. It just doesn't seem to be deep enough from east to west to be able to handle egress and, or the traffic and drainage and things like that. I'm just looking at it, if the owner of the property is looking at taking out some of the units, mobile home units that are there already, and I know that diminishes the number of available homes and stuff. Is there a possibility of them looking at going all the way back to Karen Lane and deepening from east to west, that property?
He doesn't, no, he doesn't want to do that. And mainly, you know, when you look at that, that's a good view right there. I mean, across the street, yes, it is shallower depth, but you can see the businesses across the way just have a single parking aisle. Most of those, as you can see there, immediately do have a parking space and another drive aisle behind. But we've, you know, that's kind of the exercise of the site plan, was to show that, yes, we can realistically make a business fit here. And my personal perspective probably maybe doesn't align with the owners, but just knowing this corridor, I mean, I think you stand a way better chance to get offices, you know, dentists, maybe some of those kind of users in a parcels like this, as opposed to any kind of a fast food retail. But you never know exactly, and so he's obviously going to ask us to try to perform and get the best uses and still, you know, meet the criteria of what's expected here in the city. But that just my personal perspective is you have a way better chance to get offices and stores of that kind of caliber. You know, maybe you get a paint store or something like that, but those are the kind of uses in my mind that you're going to have on something like this, Gary.
And I would just echo. I would also add that the subway just to the north of us, I mean, that nearly matches exactly the same lot depth that they're utilizing, and that works just fine. So I think that this depth is sufficient and would work just fine.
Yeah, Brian, I agree with you and Jason. I don't, Gary, I understand your concern, but I think the depth is doable, but I think the issues are going to be the traffic report and the drainage issue. And I know that's what's going to come up, you know, at the planning meeting.
Yeah, and we'll definitely, we understand that we need to get those.
Yeah, to give you an example, Gary, for years, the standard site for a quick trip was a little over a 200-foot square. They bought 1 acre on the corner of prime locations, about a 200-foot square, and ran their convenience stores quite efficiently.
Mhm.
Now, most of those have been redeveloped into other commercial uses. For instance, your Starbucks. The Starbucks can run very efficiently on an acre
Sure.
if access is well defined.
Well, okay. Unless Gary or Alex has any other comments or questions, I think we need to move forward here.
So Bill, if we go forward, we want to address the 50-foot right-of-way, the 20-foot utility easement, a traffic study. Do we want to add in drainage to a motion?
I think it has to be there as part of it. You know, as far as the preliminary, you know, I guess I don't have an issue with approving that with conditions that those be addressed prior to the final coming to us.
Okay.
I just wanted to remind you that we do have a drainage report that we did file with this, and it does quantify the drainage areas that are necessary for development. So I just wanted to just remind you of that.
Yeah, Les's concern, if I understand it, Les, is that we don't have it defined on the drawing where it exactly goes.
Right, it's about committing the land area for detention, whether that be above ground or below ground. You know, there's always that alternative to do some sort of underground detention.
Right. Well, as I mentioned when we started, and I apologize if I didn't say this well enough, but our client would really like to be able to enact the zoning and get the preliminary approved. While obviously he'd like to one fell swoop do the final, we may not be able to, commit to all these things satisfactorily to, I guess, from our vantage point. But we let us continue to work on that, and I guess you can choose how you want to handle the final. If you want to make that contingent on getting these other things nailed down, we'd very much appreciate that if you're able to work with us. But we understand you got to protect your interests.
Bill, I guess I would be comfortable with moving the preliminary PUD along with some notes that would limit access to Andover Road to the First Street location and one location north and one location south of First Street, with the final configuration to be determined at the final PUD stage, which that final PUD after a traffic report may show us that those could only be right in, right out. And they've already offered up to remove the Douglas access. I'm just not comfortable with 2 points of access on Rhonda Street. If you look at the circulation drawing, it shows the radius to the subject property driveway tying right into the radius for Andover Road and Rhonda Street. That's just not enough space there. If you think about
listen,
it.
We can get rid of that one. I thought I said we thought it'd be most logical to keep the farthest east off of Andover Road on Rhonda.
And I think we could use the same note there on Rhonda Street, that there's one point of access to be determined at the final PUD plan pending a traffic report.
We would appreciate that.
As far as the other notes, I think they can pretty easily clean those up.
Okay, so our motion needs to address the access, limiting access on Andover Road at First and the locations north and south, correct?
Yes. And also in your motion about Douglas and Rhonda.
Removing those two?
Removing the Douglas access and limiting Rhonda to one to be located at the final PUD stage pending a traffic report.
Gary, noting those items?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm trying to get those,
Yeah, I
get those
understand.
down.
I
I have
understand.
space on my piece of paper.
I hear you. And then the approval of the preliminary based on that, as well as, are we still wanting site plan to come up with the drainage retention issues?
Jason has told us he can come up with some language to add in the text
Okay,
that gives us some flexibility at the final PUD stage.
all right.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, I'll make a stab at making a motion on the preliminary planned unit development. The Andover Estates, generally located at northeast corner of Andover Road and Douglas Street, that we approve the preliminary PUD with the following conditions: that the 50-foot right-of-way is implemented, the 20-foot utility easement is done, that we have a traffic study that will address the access at First Street and possible accesses at north and south of First Street, removing the Douglas access and limiting the accesses on Rhonda Street to one access. And this is all to be finalized for the final PUD.
Les, does that work for the city?
And to clean up all of those other comments that have been made by the staff and consultants and utilities.
Okay, I'll make that part of my motion, that language all be cleaned up based on the things addressed by staff and any of our
Consultant?
consultants.
That sounds good. Alex?
I'll second that motion. I, Alex Zarchin, second that motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the preliminary PUD for the Andover Estates based on comments to be added. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 6 is the final PUD. Do we need to address this in any way, Les? Do we need a motion to,
I'm just not comfortable in moving this forward without more details.
right? Okay. Well, then Gary, Alex, unless you have some additional comments, I'd like to hear a motion to postpone or shelve this particular item until those issues are resolved.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I, Gary Israel, make a motion that we put on hold or postpone the final planned unit development for the Andover Estates until we have additional information and have addressed things that are in the preliminary PUD.
I have a motion to put on hold the final PUD for Andover Estates.
I, Alex Zarchin, second that motion to postpone the final planned unit development.
Have a motion and a second to postpone the final planned unit development Andover Estates. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Item number 7, final PUD, review of and recommendation on the Cornerstone Fifth edition, final plan, unit development plan, generally located at Cornerstone Parkway and North Andover Road, Andover, Kansas. Pending the additions and corrections to easements and resolution of comments, staff supports the recommendation to approve the final PUD to the Planning Commission. Les, has anything changed on that? I'm assuming not.
Late today, we received a revised plan from Baughman Company. And I think they've addressed some of the comments, but not necessarily all.
Les, can you comment on which comments they haven't addressed or things that you still have concerns with?
Bear with me here. I'm jumping from document to document.
Okay.
It looks like they have, in this latest version, corrected the alignment of the easement in the front yard that we brought to their attention and the 75-foot minimum lot frontage. We should have Chris Rose now that we can let Chris Rose with Baughman Company make his presentation.
Oh, I think you're stuck with Phil tonight, Les, but.
Oh, it's Phil. I thought we were off easy.
Hello, Phil.
Good evening, Phil.
How are we all doing?
Doing well.
Good. We tried to pick up the comments. I'm gonna do these one by one. If I we may have missed with this one, Les. If I look at Les's comments he did on the final planned unit development, we thought you were just having a hard time reading the 60-footer right of way. Do you want by PUD put behind 60-footer right of way?
No, we're fine on that.
Okay, so we got that corrected. The density went to 61 dwelling units. I am need a little clarification from you on the administrative adjustments. Is that something we are going to do separately at the time we take the final plat to council? Or after the plat is done?
So you all may notice that that the setbacks are 22.5 feet, not the required 25. The Uniform Development Manual allows staff to grant modifications up to 10% on setbacks and lot sizes and so forth. That all sounds well on the surface until you plat the property with the minimums required. Then the staff couldn't grant those exceptions because the plat would govern. So we felt that the best way to handle this is to show that exception on the face of the plat. Otherwise, we would have to go through a vacation of setbacks on every one of these lots to achieve that 22.5 feet. You'll notice that just the sheer configuration of this property really makes the lot depths critical. And what Phil has done is he's shown and noted all of those setbacks to get the most lot depth he can possibly achieve. That ends up to be most of the lots 114 plus or minus feet. And then there are some lot sizes that are down near 9,000 feet, which would also take into account that 10% variance that's allowed by staff.
So it's already showing that reduction.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're showing that so that we don't have to backtrack and vacate all of those because they're platted.
All right.
Yep. So if I look at Les's notes on the utility plan, our intention is to front load all the utilities. That's why we do not have rear yard easements on this. And then we have revised the plat that was delivered to Justin today to include the easement request from Evergy and to pick up some of the sanitary sewer extensions that weren't appropriately covered with easement. If I look at the 4 comments from Justin, we sent him the title report. I cannot answer about the preliminary grading plan. I apologize for that. I know we sent the drainage and utility plan out. I need to verify the grading plan, but we can do that by next Tuesday if we haven't done that. We added the scale note, 1 inch equals 100 feet. We verified and tweaked lot 9 and 10 to make sure they met the 75-foot front yard requirement at the building setback. And item 4 is that we're front loading the utilities is the reason we don't have rear easements on this stuff.
Phil, you mentioned lots 9 and 10. In the note here, there's 9, 10, and 11. Did I miss something?
That was a comment that I had initially made. And Phil did address it. I believe lots 10 and 11 did meet that front building setback. So it was just that
Okay.
lot 9 that Phil mentioned. So we're all good on those 3 lots.
Okay. Thank you.
And I think when I go to the staff report, I've already mentioned the items that were listed in this. So I think we've picked up most of the comments from staff. If we've missed any, it was not intentional, but we'll be glad to pick those up as Justin looks through this before the next planning commission. So I admitted my faux pas to Justin. Chris sent this to me last week. I thought he sent it to Justin. He sent it to me to review first. So I figured that out this morning and we scrambled around and got it back out to Justin. So sorry about that. We had good intentions, Justin. We just weren't communicating remotely.
Not a problem.
So Phil, we got a marked up plat from Westar, Evergy.
Yes, sir.
I presume you've already had those conversations with them about the front loading, and we've not heard anything back from them. Are they comfortable sharing that 10-foot utility easement with sanitary sewer, for instance?
They haven't had any problem with that. Chris has been in communication with Evergy, Heidi out there, and I'm not sure the plat I've submitted to you matched their markup exactly, but she was good in the communications with them. She was good with all the easements that we provided. So I may need to have her verify that with Justin, but those two worked through it all and they were comfortable.
Okay, I see what they've worked out there on this revised. They've changed that front yard easement to 20 feet from the 10 that's shown on the version that the committee has.
That eased a lot of Heidi's concerns through the whole thing when we gave her 20 foot. And we're putting everything up front. So, and they know that. So that's cable, electric, gas, everything's front loaded on these. It takes some serious coordination when we do that, but it is done quite a bit on some of these tighter plats like this.
This is nothing compared to the heritage we just did where we crammed sewer and cable and electric and television in a rear yard alley easement. But like you say, it did take a lot of coordination to make it happen.
It does. Our engineers need to be communicating in the beginning.
Okay. Thank you, Phil. Comments? Les, Alex, Gary?
I think everything that I might have wanted to know has been addressed.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't have any other questions on this.
All right. Well, gentlemen, that's the case. Outside the grading plan, I'm looking for a motion for the final PUD, Cornerstone.
Mr. Chairman, I, Gary Israel, make the motion that we approve the final planned unit development for Cornerstone 5th Edition, generally located at Cornerstone Parkway and North Andover Road, and that this can be sent to the Planning Commission with the grading issues addressed.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I, Alex Zarchin, will second that motion to approve the final planned unit development at Cornerstone 5th Edition.
I have a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Phil.
Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
You too.
Thanks, Bill.
All right then, number 8, member items. I do not have any. Gentlemen.
I'll bring it up again, but Les might have a guess on this. The Ottaway property out here by the sports park, on the purchase of that property and removal of that of the house and other items on that land.
Once again, we have extended our contract on that property as the owners try to clear up some issues. Lance, do you remember what that date was? Was it July this time?
I believe it is July, one of the 2 council meetings in July, either July. Jenny's probably popping up to set us straight, so.
Jenny's, ooh.
Are you after the Llewellyn date? Is that what I heard?
Yeah.
June
Yeah.
13th,
June 13th.
30.
June
30. Okay.
There you go, Alex. All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one item, and this is as a citizen of Andover. I'm thinking about putting up a little screening fence in my side yard to hide my trash bins and my AC unit. And so I was looking on the website and I couldn't find anything. And I know I'm probably looking in the wrong place and I'm getting older, but I couldn't find anything that said what I would need to do if I wanted to put in a 4 little screening fence on my property. Do I need to get a permit? Do I need to come to the city? What kind of material I can use? So at some point, when we get out of this stay at home and all that, if somebody could walk me through that so I have a better understanding of it, it's easier if somebody shows me the first time how to do everything, as opposed to me digging around and getting frustrated. So, that's just, as a citizen and trying to do that, I wasn't able to come up with the answers that I was looking for. So if we could do that sometime in the future, that'd be great.
Justin would love to do that.
Okay, great, Justin.
Face.
I'll happy to look into it, and we'll be in touch.
It's something I would like to do maybe this year. So, I'm not in a big hurry. I've got other honeydews to do during this time. So
Sure.
I just hope everybody's safe and, that everybody's doing well. I mean, this is a difficult time in our lives right now, so.
It is, and I'm going to add that I am pleased with the outcome of this meeting. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm happy the way it progressed and the input that was given. I don't know if I'm paying more attention to the notes and so forth because of this, but it went very well, and I hope you guys agree. But
Yeah, I think it's worked out pretty well.
and I want to thank Les and Lance and Justin for all the time and effort that they put in, and Jennifer. And so kudos to everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, especially to Craig for getting everything set up for us and walking us
That
through
is
a
correct.
preliminary
Craig
trial.
in the background there, you bet.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you. We're in 13 minutes going to jump to our city council meeting, which is my 4th Zoom meeting of the day.
Well, good deal. Well, I'll make a motion then that we adjourn the meeting.
I need a motion, gentlemen.
I just made that motion,
Oh,
Bill.
I'm
that
sorry,
we
you did.
adjourn the
Okay.
meeting.
I'll second the motion that we adjourn the subdivision committee.
We have a
Meeting.
motion and a second to adjourn this meeting to this evening. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. Thank you. And we'll see you next Tuesday.
Okay.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.